There's just something magical about a cafe. That warmth, right? The smell of coffee,
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
that rich aroma.
And the buzz, the gentle hum of conversation. It's just like the perfect spot to meet up or just watch the world go by.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It is.
It's a dream, I think, that a lot of us have this idea of creating that space, being the heart of that little community spot.
It really is. It taps into something quite fundamental, doesn't it? Connection, comfort, just a pause in a busy day.
Yeah.
It's definitely more than just, pouring coffee. You're crafting an experience.
Exactly. And maybe you listening right now, maybe you're a high school senior, you're thinking about college, the future, all that
Big stuff.
big stuff. But you've also got that little spark, that entrepreneurial thing going on. And you see that cafe dream and think, huh, could I actually do that? Like, what would it even take to build something like that?
Right. Where do you even begin?
If that sounds like you, then this deep dive is really designed to start answering those kinds of questions. We're going to take that initial spark, that idea you have, and give you a solid foundation, sort of the first look at the blueprint, you could say.
A blueprint. I like
Yeah.
that. Yeah. We've pulled together insights from, well, all sorts of places, articles, research, even chats from people who've actually, done it, opened their own cafes.
Mm-hmm. Real world experience.
And our mission here is just to demystify the whole process a bit, give you a clear, encouraging, but also informative overview. We want to focus on the essentials, the core concepts, without getting bogged down in like super confusing business jargon.
Yeah, keep it practical. Give you some solid knowledge you can actually build on later.
So we've kind of structured this into three main parts. First, we'll talk about building that initial plan, sketching out the dream, basically, and seeing how it looks on paper.
Getting it down. Then we'll dive into understanding the world outside your cafe doors. The market, who your potential customers are, who else is maybe serving them already.
Competitors, yeah. And finally, we'll touch on the key things involved in actually running the show day to day, the stuff that keeps the lights on and the customers happy.
Keeps the business going, keeps it sustainable. It's a fair bit to cover, but we'll break it down piece by piece.
Okay, sounds good.
Yeah.
Let's unpack this dream then and see what it takes to start thinking about, well, brewing it into a real business. So you've got this vision in your head. Maybe it's a specific look like super minimalist and modern, or maybe it's all vintage finds and cozy chairs.
Or maybe it's about the coffee itself, right? Like amazing single origin beans, ethically sourced. Or perhaps it's incredible pastries that are the star.
Right. Whatever that main idea is, the very first really crucial step, according to what we've seen, is starting to put that down into a business plan.
That's right. One source, Accountancy Cloud, they talk about financial projections being the heart of the plan. And yeah, the money side is super important. We'll get to that. But the whole document, really, it acts as your foundational roadmap.
Roadmap. Yeah, that feels much less scary than business plan. It's like if you're planning a big road trip, you wouldn't just jump in the car, right?
Exactly. You figure out where you're going, how you'll get there, maybe look at different routes, what supplies you need.
Snacks. Very important.
Crucial. And this roadmap for your cafe, it's not meant to be carved in stone on day one. That's really key. We're talking about a foundational plan here.
Something that can change.
Oh, absolutely. It will change. As you do more research, as you gain experience, as, life happens and throws you curveballs or maybe new opportunities pop up. But having that initial map, absolutely vital.
Okay, so why is having this plan, even a basic one, so important right at the beginning? Especially if you're just like exploring the idea.
Well, Accountancy Cloud makes a good point. It forces you to actually spell out how your cafe is going to make money and roughly when you think that might happen. It makes you grapple with the nuts and bolts.
Gets it out of your head and onto paper.
Precisely. And crucially, it helps guide those early decisions. Thinking things through on paper first helps you spot potential problems, maybe avoid some really expensive mistakes later on.
Makes sense.
They also mention how market research, which we'll definitely dig into, feeds directly into your plan. It shapes things like your pricing, what's on your menu, how many people you might need to hire, even what hours you'll be open. Without a plan that's informed by some research, those big decisions are basically just guesses.
And guesses can be expensive.
Very expensive.
So for you listening, thinking about this maybe years before you actually, unlock the door for the first time, creating this initial plan isn't about perfection. It's not about having something ready to show investors tomorrow.
Not all.
It's more about taking that creative spark and giving it some structure, Organizing your thoughts, kind of testing the basic idea, is this even possible? How does it feel when you start attaching some real-world stuff to it?
Exactly. It's about channeling that passion into something, well, actionable. And even a basic plan for a cafe startup like the sources outline has some key pieces you'd need to think through.
All right, so where do you even start putting this plan together? What are the main components?
It really begins with the core of your idea. The concept and vision. What is this cafe going to be? What's the main vibe? What makes it stand out from, the place down the street? Is it the coffee, the food, the service, the atmosphere?
This is defining its personality, right? Is it going to be that quiet spot, perfect for studying, maybe near a library or college, like one source suggested could be a good location type?
Or is it all about speed and efficiency? Like
Hmm.
a high-energy place near a bus station or train hub catering to commuters grabbing something quick.
Or maybe it's that warm, cozy community hub, like nestled amongst little independent shops.
Exactly. That initial concept really sets the stage for everything else. And one source, the one about best locations, makes a really critical point here. Your concept has to actually work with the type of location you choose.
How so?
Well, if your concept is all about comfy chairs and encouraging people to hang out for hours, that probably won't fly in a tiny spot designed for high-volume, quick takeaway orders. Your cafe's identity needs to complement its surroundings.
Right, right. You wouldn't put a fancy sit-down place in the middle of a food court, usually. Okay, that makes sense. So you've defined what your cafe is. Next up is who is for, the target market.
Yes, sources like Accountancy Cloud and Kimola really hammer this home. You have to identify your ideal customers. And it's not just about the basics like age or income,
More than demographics.
much more. You need to think about their habits, their routines. What do they actually value when they visit a cafe? Is it the absolute best quality coffee? Is it speed? Is it the atmosphere? Healthy options? Or maybe it's just seeing a friendly face behind the counter every morning.
Okay, so understanding the who is really fundamental because that influences pretty much everything else you decide.
It really, really does. Knowing your target market shapes your menu, your prices, the way the place looks and feels, your opening hours, even like the music you play. Kimola actually dives into this a bit. They talk about how demographics can influence preferences. Maybe younger folks lean towards cold brew or nitro,
Yeah, I see that.
while maybe middle-aged customers are more focused on health aspects or sustainability. Income level obviously affects how much people are willing to spend on premium coffee.
Sure.
And even where you are a busy city versus a quieter suburb changes things. City people might value speed more. Suburban folks might be looking for that community feel, that traditional cafe experience.
And this is where those, what did Kimolan call them? Psychographic attributes.
Yeah.
Things beyond just age and income.
Yes, exactly. Thinking about their values and lifestyle. Are they health conscious? Looking for organic milk, plant-based options? Are they worried about the environment, wanting fair trade coffee and sustainable packaging?
Or are they super techie, wanting mobile ordering?
Right. Or do they just value creativity and unique experiences? Are they looking for convenience above all? Or do they really crave that welcoming vibe and baristas who actually know their stuff? Understanding these deeper motivations lets you tailor everything specifically for the people you want to attract.
And it connects back to those location ideas too, right? Students near libraries want convenience and snacks.
Business people near offices want speed and quality coffee.
Gym goers want healthy stuff.
Exactly. It all ties together. You're building the cafe for them.
Okay, concept nailed down. Target market identified. Now, what are you actually selling? Products and services, the menu.
This is where you list it all out. Coffee and tea, obviously, those are the stars. But also snacks, baked goods, maybe some light food like sandwiches or salads. Even merchandise mugs, t-shirts, bags of beans can be a revenue stream.
Right.
And that 15-plus best location source gives great examples of matching the menu to the location and market. Near libraries, profitable takeaway snacks, good baked goods, perfect fit.
Easy to grab and go.
Exactly. Near transit centers. Things people can easily eat on a trip. Pre-made sandwiches, maybe toast, yogurt cups. Near gyms? Definitely lean into healthy stuff. Smoothies, energy bars, protein shakes, maybe dried fruit, nuts, low-cal or gluten-free options.
So the menu isn't just about your personal favorites, it's strategic.
Yes.
It's driven by who your customers are and where you actually are.
Totally. And beyond just what you sell, EBR Consulting makes a crucial point about consistency. Consistency in taste, how it looks, and the cost. They specifically mention using standardized recipes.
Meaning every latte tastes the same.
Pretty much. Every latte, every muffin, every sandwich, it should taste and look consistent no matter who's working that day. Using tools like scales for coffee grounds, shot glasses for espresso, That precision ensures consistency. And bonus, it helps you control your ingredient costs too.
That makes sense. Consistency builds trust. If I love something once, I want to know I'll get that same great thing next time. Okay, concept, target, menu. Check. How do people actually find your amazing cafe? Basic marketing ideas.
Right, marketing. It's how you tell your target audience who you are and why they should come check you out. Sources like EBR Consulting and Kimela suggest a bunch of ideas.
Like what?
Things like using social media effectively, maybe building an email list, having loyalty programs to keep people coming back, getting involved in local events, even teaming up with other nearby businesses.
So it's not just like build it and they will come. You
Yeah.
have to actively reach out.
You really do. And targeted promotions can be super cost effective. Kimela highlights digital channels, social media, especially for having high interaction rates and letting you target specific groups or interests.
Yeah, I can see that.
Creating really cool original content on Instagram or TikTok can build your brand's personality and make people feel connected to you, maybe build some loyalty even before they visit.
A cafe with a great Instagram feed definitely feels more approachable. And collaborating with those other local businesses you mentioned, like a nearby bookstore or gym, that seems really smart to cross promotion.
It's a classic win-win, right? Builds community connections, expands your reach, just like EBR Consulting and Kimela suggest. Great for everyone involved.
Okay, this all leads us to the part that maybe feels a bit intimidating, but is absolutely essential. The money. The simple financial overview. We're not trying to make anyone a CPA today, but we need to grasp the basics.
Exactly. Accountancy Cloud says the plan needs to touch on startup costs and how you actually make money, your revenue streams. And yeah, projecting your income and expenses is a fundamental part of this whole section.
Okay, startup costs, getting the doors open. What kind of numbers are we realistically talking about?
Well, the Reddit coffee shop owner's source gives some ballpark figures, and honestly, they vary quite a bit. Startup costs could be anywhere from, say, $80,000 on the really low end up to maybe $250,000 or even more.
Wow, that's a big range.
It really depends heavily on the location. Rent is huge. How much renovation is needed, what kind of equipment you buy. The source specifically mentioned that places like Northern Virginia, for example, would probably lean towards the higher end because of rent and construction costs.
Okay, 80K to $250 K plus.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a significant amount of money, especially thinking about it as a high school student.
It is. And it really highlights why planning is so crucial. It helps you understand the scale of what you're potentially taking on. The biggest chunks of that money usually go into construction or build out if the space isn't already set up for food service, and then buying all the equipment.
Like the espresso machine.
Oh, yeah. The Reddit source lists the essentials: espresso machine, grinders, refrigerators, display cases, furniture. You also need that initial inventory, beans, milk, cups, food, everything, plus licensing and permits, which Accountancy Cloud also flags.
The equipment sounds really expensive. Are there ways to, make those costs a bit more manageable?
The Reddit thread had some good practical tips from people who've been there. One person mentioned finding really good quality refurbished espresso machines for around $5,000, which is way less than brand new.
Okay, used or refurbished.
Yeah. Others talked about doing some of the renovation work themselves if they had the skills, or being really smart about sourcing used equipment. Another really interesting idea that came up in that Reddit discussion was maybe buying an existing cafe instead of starting totally from scratch.
Buying one that's already running.
Yeah. The person who shared their experience found it super helpful because the business already had processes in place, supplier relationships, maybe even some regular customers. It gave them a head start and a place to learn the ropes.
Huh. That's a really different approach. It feels a bit counterintuitive if you have this unique dream cafe in mind, but I can see how starting with something already operational can definitely lower some of those initial hurdles and risks.
It could. You're stepping in to optimize, maybe put your own stamp on it, rather than creating absolutely everything from zero. Another huge cost, once you're up and running, is the lease, renting your space.
Right, you mentioned rent earlier.
Touch Bistro calls rent one of the 3 biggest operating costs for cafes and restaurants. And the DoorDash source actually breaks down different types of commercial leases, which is really important to understand before you sign anything.
Different types. I just thought you paid rent every month.
It's a bit more complex in the commercial world. You might have a gross lease, which is the simplest. You pay one fixed amount, and the landlord covers most operating expenses like property taxes, insurance, maintenance, kind of like renting an apartment.
Okay, that sounds straightforward.
Then there's a net lease, or different versions like single, double, triple net. Here, your base rent is lower, but you, the tenant, pay for things like property taxes, insurance, maybe even maintenance on top of the rent.
Okay, so the base rent might look cheaper, but you've got these other potentially fluctuating costs to cover.
Exactly. It gives you maybe more control over maintenance, but also more exposure if taxes or insurance rates go up. Then there's a percentage lease, often seen in malls or retail centers. You pay a base rent plus a percentage of your sales over a certain amount.
So if you do really well, you pay more rent.
Essentially, yes. It can be good when you're starting out and sales are lower, but you share more of your success later. And there are variable leases too, where rent changes based on some index, but those are less common for cafes.
Wow, okay. That's definitely more involved than I realized. So what are the most critical things for a first-timer to think about when negotiating that lease?
DoorDash had some great tips. First, try really hard to get a shorter initial lease term, maybe 1 or 2 years, with options to renew later. Being locked into a 5 or 10 year lease right off the bat is a huge risk if things don't work out as planned.
Totally. A shorter term lets you test the waters.
Exactly. Also, understand the rules for getting out of the lease, the termination clauses, and any penalties, and make sure you have an assignment clause. That's crucial. It means you can transfer the lease to someone else if you sell the business or need to close. You absolutely want that flexibility.
Okay, assignment clause. Got it. Yeah.
Also, clarify who pays for repairs, you or the landlord, and negotiate clear rules about rent increases. How often can they happen? Is there a cap on how much they can raise it each time?
Good points.
And that Reddit source mentioned you should be prepared for a big upfront payment, too. Landlords often want maybe a 3 month security deposit plus the first 3 months' rent right at signing. That's a big chunk of cash for your startup budget.
So many details just for the space itself. Okay, let's say you've estimated these costs. How do people usually get that $80,000 to $250,000, whatever it is, to actually get started?
Funding. Right, funding. The sources mention a few routes. Traditional bank loans are one option, but that Reddit thread pointed out that getting SBA loans, small business administration loans, can actually be pretty tough for brand new restaurants or cafes. They often want to see several years of tax returns, which a startup just doesn't have.
Yeah. That seems like a major hurdle for someone just starting out. What else?
Crowdfunding is another avenue mentioned by New Frontier Funding. This is where you raise smaller amounts of money from a lot of people, usually online.
Like Kickstarter or something.
Exactly like that. New Frontier Funding notes can offer flexibility in how you use the money for equipment, initial operations, whatever. It can also be lower risk because some models are all or nothing. You only get the funds if you hit your goal. Plus, it can double as marketing, creating buzz, and a built-in community before you even open.
That sounds pretty cool. Funding and marketing rolled into one.
It does have potential. But New Frontier Funding also points out the downsides. Those platforms take a cut, usually 5 to 10%. There's absolutely no guarantee you'll reach your funding goal. And running a successful campaign takes a ton of time and effort planning, promoting, constantly engaging with potential backers.
So it's not a magic bullet, but definitely an option worth looking into.
For sure. Okay, so you've funded it, you've built it, the doors are open. Now, where does the money come in? Your revenue streams.
Selling coffee.
That's the main one, yeah. But also selling food, any merchandise you have, maybe hosting events, doing some catering, selling bags of beans for people to take home. Accountancy Cloud and the location source touch on these different ways money flows in. Your business plan needs to project this expected income.
And how do you make those projections realistic? It seems easy to just imagine lines out the door.
That's the danger. Accountancy Cloud really stresses being realistic with your assumptions. Don't just assume you'll be packed from day one. The Moose Mountain sample plan actually shows what this looks like, forecasts of monthly sales, broken down by category maybe, alongside all your expected expenses.
What kind of expenses?
Things like cost of sales, basically, what your ingredients cost you, salaries and wages for staff, rent, utilities, marketing costs, maybe loan payments if you took one out. The plan lays out the expected money coming in and going out over time.
So it's not just the big dream, it's the brass tacks of inflow and outflow.
Exactly. And Accountancy Cloud and Touch Bistro both emphasize that once you are open, you absolutely have to track your actual income and expenses regularly and compare them to what you projected in your plan.
See if reality matches the plan.
Right. It helps you see if you're on track, spot problems early, like if costs is higher than expected, and make adjustments. It turns the plan from just a document into a living tool you use to actually manage the business.
Okay, so the business plan isn't just something you write and file away. It's more like a dynamic blueprint you build and then use to navigate as you go.
That's a great way to put it.
All right, so we've covered that crucial first step, sketching out the dream, putting it into a foundational business plan. You've defined the concept, who it's for, what you'll sell, initial marketing thoughts, and started looking at the money.
Hmm.
But how do you know if any of that will actually work in your town specifically?
Ah, yes. That brings us to the second absolutely vital piece, conducting market research.
Research sounds homeworky.
Huh. Maybe a little, but it's crucial homework. Kimola calls it the method for collecting, analyzing, and interpreting data about your market, your audience, your business environment. Sources like Kimola, How to Choose Location, and Metrobi are all really clear. You have to do this before you commit serious money or sign that lease.
Why is it so important before taking those big steps?
Kimola uses a great analogy. Market research is your compass. It massively reduces the risk of your decisions because you're basing them on actual data, not just your gut feeling or what you hope is true.
Okay, a compass. I get that.
It provides the foundation for your marketing plan, helps you figure out how to actually reach your customers. And, maybe most importantly, it helps you look closely at your potential competitors. What are they doing well? Where are they maybe dropping the ball? Where are the gaps, the opportunities for your unique cafe to shine?
So it's not just boring data collection, it's like your secret weapon, understanding if the dream fits the reality around you and finding how to make it stand out.
Exactly. It gives you the intel you need to make smart choices. So let's talk about some actual steps you can take, even now as a high schooler, to start researching your local market.
Okay, practical steps. Where do you start with finding potential customers?
Sources like that Reddit thread on market research in Kimola suggest starting by identifying potential customers using readily available demographic info. You can look at things like the U.S. Census Bureau website. Your local city or county government website often has planning data, maybe online business directories.
What are you looking for there?
Things like the age breakdown of the area, income levels, education, common occupations. Are there lots of students, young professionals, families, retirees? Also, as the How to Choose Location source mentions, think about their lifestyle, their daily routines. Where do they go? What do they do?
So just observing the area.
Observing is huge. Pay attention. What other businesses are thriving nearby? What kind of community events happen? What are people chatting about on local Facebook groups or neighborhood apps? Kimola also points out how these demographics influence preferences, like we said. Students might want study space, office workers need speed. Thinking about the psychographics again, is health a big thing in your town? Sustainability, tech savviness.
Makes it feel less like statistics and more like understanding the actual people.
Exactly. And for deeper insights, the Reddit thread suggests simple surveys. You could use Google Forms, it's free. Make a short survey and share it on local social media. Or even just chat with friends, family, people you see at existing coffee shops. Ask them about their habits, what they like, what they wish existed.
So talking to people.
Talking to people. Informal focus groups, just small chats, can give you amazing qualitative insights. And yeah, keep an eye on local social media hashtags related to coffee or local spots. See what people are raving about or complaining about.
That sounds way more doable. Okay, so you've got a feel for who's around. How do you figure out who else is trying to get their business?
That's analyzing competition. The Reddit thread and Square both stress looking at all the businesses nearby that offer similar things. Other cafes, obviously, but also bakeries, restaurants that serve decent coffee, maybe even smoothie places or bagel shops if they're competing for that same quick breakfast or drink customer, like Square points out.
So competition isn't just the other third wave coffee shop. It's anywhere someone might go for a quick bite or drink instead of you.
Right. Business Dojo actually has like a 10-step plan for this, but the core idea is pretty simple. Go visit them, be a customer.
Spy mission.
Sort of. Pay attention. What's their menu like? What are the prices? What's the vibe, the atmosphere? How's the service? Are they busy? When are they busy? And definitely, as Kimola suggests, read their online reviews, Google, Yelp, TripAdvisor. That's pure gold for seeing what actual customers think, the good and the bad. Check out their social media, too. How do they interact online?
Okay, that's very hands-on research. What do you do with all that intel?
You use it to understand what makes each competitor distinct, as Business Dojo says. But the real goal, as Kimola stresses, is to find those gaps. What's missing in the market? Is nobody doing really high-quality pour-over? Is there a desperate need for good vegan pastries? Is every cafe loud with no quiet corners to work? Is the service generally meh
Find the unmet need.
Exactly. Finding those gaps is how you differentiate your cafe. It gives people a compelling reason to choose you over the existing options. In a crowded market, differentiation is absolutely key, according to Business Dojo.
So it's not about copying. It's about finding your unique selling proposition based on what the market actually wants or lacks.
Precisely. Your competitive analysis should directly feed back into refining your own concept and menu. Now let's link this all back to the physical space location considerations. Location, 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 how to choose location. And Metrobi really banged the drum on this one. Metrobi even says, success may brew in the details of location. I like that.
Okay, so what makes a location great? What are the must-haves?
Pretty much all sources agree. High foot traffic is vital. You need to be where people already are walking by. Visibility is also huge. Can people easily see your cafe from the street or sidewalk? Is it easy to get into, access? And parking can be important, especially if your concept involves people staying a while, not just grabbing and going.
So be visible, be accessible, be where the people are. Makes sense.
Yes. And that 15-plus best location source offered some really interesting specific ideas beyond just find a busy corner.
Yeah, like near libraries. That
Mhm.
surprised me.
Right. They suggest libraries have a steady flow of students, community groups, built-in foot traffic. And takeaway coffee and snacks are a perfect fit. Mail services too, people running errands, create traffic.
The laundromat one was interesting too.
Yeah. Customers are captive for a couple hours, needing comfort, snacks, Wi-Fi, restrooms. Plus, zoning might be easier. Being near boutique shops can work well. People browsing are often looking for a nice spot to take a break.
Complementary businesses.
Exactly. Business centers mean lots of daytime traffic from office workers, good for meetings, though maybe slower on weekends. Transit hubs expose you to huge numbers of commuters, great for grab and go, and gyms that post-workout crowd looking for healthy fuel.
Those are such concrete examples. It really makes you think differently about what kind of foot traffic you want and how it matches your cafe's concept.
That's the critical link, as Square points out. The location has to fit your target audience and your concept. And a super practical tip from How to Choose Location, always check the local zoning laws before you even think about signing a lease. Make sure a cafe is actually allowed there.
Good point. Don't want any nasty surprises later.
And Metrobi notes that while cities offer huge foot traffic, suburbs are seeing growth too. It's about finding the right kind of busy for your specific idea.
Okay, final piece of market research. Understanding trends. Keeping up with what's hot.
Yeah, you can't ignore trends. Kimola emphasizes that the coffee market is super dynamic, always changing. Staying aware is essential to stay relevant and competitive.
So what are some of the big trends shaping things right now?
Kimola mentions overall growth in coffee drinking globally, which is good news. Also, the rise of what they call cult coffee houses places, really focused on high-quality specialty beans, maybe unique brewing methods, the whole experience. There's also a huge increase in consumer concern about the whole process, where beans come from, how workers are treated, environmental impact.
Sustainability is massive, right? Eco-friendly stuff, fair trade.
Absolutely. Kimola points to huge demand for eco-friendly packaging, compostable cups, reusable options, recycling, and people wanting to know the story behind their coffee, the provenance. Was it fair trade? Direct trade? Is the company transparent about its sourcing? Being able to answer those questions can really attract certain customers.
It's not just about the coffee anymore. It's about the ethics behind it.
For many people, yes. Kimola also notes that local markets differ. Some might be more about quick convenience, others value traditional espresso and the whole cafe ritual more.
So understanding these trends isn't just about jumping on a bandwagon. It's about aligning your business with what customers actually care about and expect now.
Exactly. Kimola says staying updated gives you that competitive edge. Trends like health consciousness or plant-based diets directly impact your menu. Offering oat milk isn't niche anymore, it's practically expected. Continuously monitoring these trends, maybe checking in quarterly or annually, as Kimola suggests, helps you keep your cafe fresh and aligned with what people want.
It definitely sounds like market research isn't a one-and-done task before you open. It's something you need to keep doing.
Absolutely. It's an ongoing process.
Okay, wow. We've planned the dream cafe. We've grounded it in reality with market research. Now let's talk about actually doing it,
Right.
running the place day in and day out. What are the key elements for successfully running a cafe?
This is where all that planning and research turns into daily action. And one thing that just comes up again and again in the sources is excellent customer service.
Seems obvious, maybe,
Yeah.
but why is it so foundational?
It's absolutely vital because it's what brings people back consistently. Olo, talking about surveys, made an interesting point. Customers are more likely to give you feedback if they feel like you genuinely care about service. It implies that when you really prioritize making them feel welcome and valued, they notice and they engage more.
So it's more than just taking the order correctly. It's the whole vibe, making them feel good about being there.
Exactly. And a huge part of great service is how you handle feedback. Kamala's piece on feedback analysis really stresses responding to reviews, especially the negative ones.
Ow. Negative reviews are tough.
They are. But responding shows you're listening, you care about their experience, and you're willing to fix things or at least address their concerns. Engaging with people on social media, like Business Dojo suggests, is another way to build that connection. And Olo mentions that consistency in the entire experience, from the coffee quality to staff friendliness to how clean the place is crucial.
How can you actively get that feedback besides just waiting for reviews?
Surveys are a classic tool. Olo gives some good best practices. Be clear why you're asking, send it soon after their visit, maybe automate that, target the right folks, keep the language simple, allow an NA option, and maybe ask if they want to join your email list at the end. And yeah, keeping a close eye on those online review sites, Google, Yelp, TripAdvisor, Trustpilot, Kimola, list these as key sources of unsolicited feedback. You need to monitor them actively and respond.
Those reviews really are like a public report card, aren't they? Okay, moving on from service to the actual stuff you sell. The coffee, the food.
Quality products, non-negotiable. EBR Consulting really emphasizes using good ingredients and, that word again, consistency. Those standardized recipes we talked about earlier, they are absolutely critical now in daily operations to make sure every single drink, every food item meets your quality standard and tastes the same every single time.
And using scales and measuring tools helps with that consistency.
Yes, and it also helps control your costs. Precision is key for both quality and profitability.
The quality ingredients, they cost more, right? How does that fit with the budget?
You're right, they often do. Food costs, which covers everything from beans and milk to flour and avocados, are one of the biggest operating expenses for any food business, according to Touch Distro. That's why tracking your food cost percentage is so important.
Food cost percentage. What's that again?
It's basically the cost of all your ingredients divided by the revenue you made selling the items made from those ingredients, expressed as a percentage. Sources like Touch Bistro and Fresh Cup suggest the ideal range is usually somewhere between 20% and 40%.
So if it's higher than 40%, that's a red flag.
It could be, yeah. It might mean you need to look at your pricing, maybe find slightly cheaper suppliers for some things without sacrificing quality, or work harder on reducing waste. Customer feedback is also gold here. It tells you what's selling well, and maybe what people wish you offered, like those plant-based milks Kamala mentioned.
And keeping the menu fresh with specials or seasonal things, like Kamala suggested, that probably helps keep people interested too.
Definitely. Staying on top of trends feeds right back into your product quality and offerings. Okay, let's peek under the hood now. The engine room. Basic operations, focusing especially on cost control and efficiency.
Right. Keeping things running smoothly without breaking the bank.
Exactly. Running a cafe is complex, and it's not cheap. Those operating costs add up fast, as Touch Bistro and EBR Consulting warn. Managing costs effectively is absolutely essential if you want the business to last and actually make money. EBR Consulting is blunt. Cost control is key to profitability.
What are the biggest ongoing costs to watch out for once you're open?
Touch Bistro nails the big three: labor, paying your staff; food, your cost of goods sold, or COGS, and rent. Those three together make up a huge chunk of your expenses. Sometimes labor and COGS together are called your prime cost. Keeping a very close eye on these is critical.
Okay, labor, food, rent. Got it. Let's break down some key operational areas within that, like inventory.
Inventory management, super important for controlling those food costs. EBR Consulting calls effective inventory management critical.
What does that look like day to day in a cafe?
It means knowing what you have, knowing what you need to order, and knowing how fast you're using everything. If you order too much milk or too many pastries, overstocking, things expire and you're throwing money away. If you don't order enough, understocking, you run out of popular items and you lose sales. Neither is good.
It's a balancing act. How do you manage it?
Regular stock checks or audits help you track levels and see usage patterns. And using a FIFO system, first in, first out, is absolutely vital.
First in, first out.
Yeah, it just means you always use the oldest stock first. Think about milk in your fridge at home. You put the new carton at the back and use the one at the front first, right? Same principle in the cafe fridge or pantry. It drastically cuts down on waste from things expiring. EBR Consulting also suggests building good relationships with your suppliers that can sometimes help you negotiate better prices or delivery schedules, which directly helps your costs.
Okay, so managing inventory well directly helps reduce waste.
Absolutely. And waste reduction itself is a huge focus area, according to EBR Consulting. The food and beverage industry generates a lot of waste. Tracking your waste, actually writing down what gets thrown out, spoiled milk, stale muffins, leftover soup, helps you see why. Are you consistently over-prepping something? Is spoilage a problem? Identifying those patterns is the first step to fixing them.
Seems simple, but really important. If you don't know where the waste is coming from, you can't stop it.
Exactly. Okay, moving to another huge cost center. Staffing, labor. It's almost always one of the biggest expenses, maybe the biggest chunk of your operating costs is EBR Consulting and Touch Bistro. You've got baristas, cashiers, maybe kitchen help.
And the cost isn't just their hourly pay, is it?
No way. Touch Bistro lists it out. Wages, salaries for managers maybe, payroll taxes, which are significant, overtime pay, bonuses, vacation and sick pay, maybe health benefits. It all adds up. Finding that balance between having enough staff to give great service but not so many that your labor costs sink you is crucial.
How do you track that? Is there a percentage for labor too?
Yep. Labor cost percentage. Same idea as food cost. Divide your total labor costs for a period by your total sales for that same period. Multiply by 100. Touch Bistro says most places aim for under 30%, though the average might be creeping up a bit, maybe around 31.6% in one study they cited. Fresh Cup suggests 20-30% as ideal, but notes can fluctuate.
So how do you control it?
Smart scheduling is key. Predicting busy times and slow times based on past sales data and scheduling staff accordingly. You don't want people standing around idle during slow periods. That's expensive. But you absolutely don't want to be short-staffed during a rush that kills service and loses sales.
Another tricky balancing act. Enough people for good service, but not too many for the budget.
It's a constant adjustment, monitoring sales and tweaking schedules. Okay, next up, marketing and community engagement, but thinking beyond just the initial launch, this is the ongoing stuff.
Keeping the buzz going, building loyalty.
Exactly. Things like loyalty programs are great for rewarding regulars. Keeping up that active, engaging social media presence is vital now. Still participating in local events, continuing those collaborations with other businesses that EBR Consulting, Business Dojo, and Kamola mentioned, that keeps you visible and part of the community fabric. Targeted promotions can still work well.
And digital marketing channels remain useful because you can track them.
Yeah, Kimola points out they're often cost-effective, and you can measure the results, website visits, social media engagement, maybe even track sales coming directly from an online ad. Measuring that return on investment, ROI, is key. Building a strong overall brand presence, both online and offline, is crucial too, as DoorDash notes.
And you need to check if your marketing spending is actually working.
Absolutely. EBR Consulting says you should regularly analyze the cost versus the ROI for your campaigns. Are those Facebook ads actually bringing people in? Is the loyalty program boosting repeat visits? Make sure your marketing dollars are working hard for you. Finally, maybe the most important element of all for long-term success, adaptability and learning.
Being willing to change.
Being willing and able to change. The world moves fast, market conditions change, customer tastes evolve. Keymole is really strong on this. Continuous monitoring and adaptation are essential to keep your cafe relevant and effective. Accountancy Cloud also stresses monitoring your performance constantly. Staying agile, staying curious, being willing to learn, that's crucial for staying profitable and just surviving.
How do you actually do that day to day? What does being adaptable look like?
It means really listening. Listening to customers through surveys, reading those reviews, but also just chatting with them when they're in the shop. Pay attention. And then be willing to actually make changes based on what you hear. Review your numbers regularly monthly, as Accountancy Cloud suggests. Look at sales trends, costs, waste levels. Keep doing that market research we talked about, maybe not intensely every week, but Kemola suggests checking in quarterly or maybe twice a year.
So using all that data you're collecting continuously.
Yes. Use your sales reports, website analytics, social media insights to see what's working and what's not. Make data-driven decisions. Spot rising costs early and figure out why, like Accountancy Cloud advises. Be ready to pivot. Kimola gives the example. If wellness trends surge, be ready to add more healthy options or adapt your menu. That quick awareness and ability to adapt is what keeps you competitive.
It really sounds like running a cafe successfully isn't a destination you arrive at. It's a constant journey of observing, learning, tweaking, and improving.
That sums it up perfectly.
Wow.
Okay.
We have definitely covered a lot of ground today. We started with that really appealing, cozy dream of a cafe.
The vibe.
Then we walked through how to start structuring that dream, putting it into a foundational business plan. Then we really dug into the essential work of understanding the market, the reality outside your walls.
Right, the research piece.
And finally, we explored those key elements you need to actually run the business day to day, hopefully successfully.
Yeah, we touched on clarifying your concept, really zooming in on your ideal customers, planning your menu strategically, thinking about initial marketing, understanding those big financial pieces, startup costs, ongoing expenses like rent and labor, funding options, how money comes in.
And the market research, looking at demographics, analyzing competitors, spotting trends, thinking hard about location, super important.
Absolutely. And then the operational stuff. Making excellent customer service a priority, gathering feedback, keeping product quality consistent, controlling costs through smart inventory and waste reduction, managing staff efficiently, keeping up with marketing and community engagement.
And that big one at the end, always being ready to adapt and learn.
It all ties together.
We really tried to give you, our listener, especially if you're that aspiring young entrepreneur, a solid, encouraging, but also realistic starting point, a foundational overview.
Yeah, a roadmap. It's about taking these big ideas and starting to think about how they apply to your specific vision in your town with your resources on your timeline.
It's definitely a big undertaking, no doubt about it.
Yeah.
But hopefully, by breaking it down into these main chunks, planning, researching, operating, it feels a little less huge, a little more like a series of challenges you can actually tackle.
Exactly. It's more about knowing the right questions to ask yourself and where you might start looking for answers rather than feeling like you need to have everything figured out perfectly from day one.
Okay, so here's something interesting to maybe leave you thinking about. One of the sources we looked at, Fresh Cut Magazine, made a really good point. They said that for many business owners, success isn't just about the money, the profit.
Right. It can also be about things like achieving a certain quality of life or feeling like you're making a real contribution to your community.
So that raises a really interesting question for you as you think about this cafe dream. How do you see yourself balancing that essential business side? Tracking the numbers, managing costs, trying to be profitable with the passion. The reason you probably got excited about this idea in the first place.
That desire to create that welcoming space, maybe build connections, share something you love.
Yeah. What does success really truly look like for your future cafe? Is it purely the bottom line? Or is it something broader? Something that includes the people you serve, the role your cafe plays in their lives and the life of your community?
That's a really great question to ponder. What's your personal definition of success for this venture?
Definitely something worth brewing on as you explore this exciting path.
A great thought to end on.
Indeed. And that wraps up our deep dive into the first steps of thinking about opening a cafe aimed at aspiring young entrepreneurs. We really hope this gives you a solid and encouraging foundation for your journey ahead.